It didn't have a name, not one I could pronounce with a human tongue. For years, I just called it the Watcher. It was a fixture of my darkest nights, a piece of bedroom furniture made of shadow and dread, my own personal, recurring sleep paralysis demon. Everyone's experience with sleep paralysis is different, but the core components are usually the same. The waking terror, the crushing weight on your chest, the inability to scream, and the presence. That malevolent, unseen thing in the room with you. For most, it's a formless horror. For me, it had a shape, a specific, unchanging shape that I came to know as well as my own reflection. It was tall, maybe 7 feet, and unnaturally thin, a stick figure silhouette cut from the fabric of absolute blackness. Its limbs were too long, its fingers like tendrils of ink dripping from its hands. It had no face, just a smooth, obsidian oval where features should be. And it always stood in the far corner of my room, right where the walls met, observing me. That was its purpose. To watch. The first time it happened, I was 19. I woke up, or my mind did, to the familiar, gut-wrenching sensation of being pinned to the mattress. A leaden weight sat on my diaphragm, making each attempted breath a Herculean effort. My eyes were open, scanning the moonlit room, and that's when I saw it, the shape in the corner. I tried to scream, to thrash, to do anything, but my body was a tomb. I was a conscious corpse. The panic was a white-hot wire in my brain. After what felt like an eternity, the pressure released, and I bolted upright, gasping, sweat-soaked. The corner was empty. I chalked it up to stress, to bad pizza, to the weird wiring of a young adult brain. But it kept happening. Once a month, then twice, then every week. The Watcher was a constant, dreadful appointment in my calendar. I saw doctors, therapists, sleep specialists. I was prescribed everything from melatonin to mild sedatives. Nothing worked. The Watcher was impervious to modern medicine. Over the years, a grim routine established itself. The panic never lessened, but I became accustomed to the ritual. The waking, the wait, the silent observation from the corner. I learned that if I didn't fight it, if I just lay there and endured its gaze, the episode would pass more quickly. It was a form of surrender. I accepted the Watcher as a permanent, terrifying part of my life. That changed 6 months ago. It was a Tuesday night. Rain lashed against my bedroom window, and the wind howled like a banshee. I fell into a fitful sleep, and as expected, I was jerked into that awful liminal state. The weight descended. My eyes snapped open, and there it was, in its corner. Same tall, thin silhouette, same featureless face, but something was different. It wasn't standing still. It was swaying, almost imperceptibly, a slow, pendulum-like motion that was somehow more menacing than its usual absolute stillness. The air in the room, always cold during these episodes, felt frigid enough to crack. I did my usual routine. Don't fight it, breathe. It will be over soon. Then, it took a step forward. My heart, already hammering against my ribs, seemed to stop altogether. In all my years of this torment, it had never moved from its corner. It was an observer, a statue of nightmare. Its movement broke a fundamental rule of our twisted relationship, a fresh, primal terror, purer than any I had felt before, injected itself directly into my veins. It took another step, its movements fluid and silent, its long, thin legs crossing the floor without a sound. The pressure on my chest intensified. and I felt a new sensation, a sharp, prickling static crawling over my skin, as if the air itself was alive with malevolent energy. It stopped at the foot of my bed. I could see it more clearly now. The blackness of its form wasn't just an absence of light. It was a substance, a viscous, light-eating void. The smooth surface of its face seemed to swirl with deeper shades of black. It leaned over me, its faceless head tilting, and the static grew louder, buzzing in my ears like a swarm of angry insects. And then it spoke. Its voice wasn't a sound. It was a feeling. It was the sensation of bones grinding together, of ice forming in the bloodstream, of rot setting in. It was a psychic intrusion, a thought that wasn't my own, forced directly into the core of my consciousness. Soon, it whispered. The word was a symphony of despair. It carried the weight of forgotten graves, the chill of absolute zero, the promise of an ending that was not an end, but a beginning of something infinitely worse. Then, it was gone. The weight vanished. The static faded. I shot up in bed, a ragged scream finally tearing itself from my throat. I scrambled backwards, pressing myself against the headboard, my eyes fixed on the empty space at the foot of my bed. The rain continued to fall. The wind continued to howl, but my world had been irrevocably shattered. Soon. The word echoed in my mind for days, a toxic loop. What did it mean? Soon what? Soon you'll die. Soon I'll take you. Soon this will get worse. The ambiguity was a torture in itself. The watcher was no longer a passive observer. It had become an active participant. It had a timeline. The next episode came only 3 nights later. I was afraid to sleep, chugging coffee until my hands shook. But exhaustion is a tyrant that always collects its debt. I lost the fight, and as soon as I slipped into unconsciousness, I felt the familiar, soul-crushing pull. I awoke into the paralysis. The weight was there, the cold was there, and the watcher was not in his corner. It was standing right beside my bed, looming over me, its featureless face inches from mine. The static was immediate and deafening. It didn't wait this time. "He is almost ready for you," the voice scraped across my mind. "Who?" I screamed the question internally, but of course no sound came out. "Who is he? Ready for what?" The watcher straightened up, and one of its long, ink-drip fingers lifted. It didn't touch me, but it pointed at my chest, right over my frantically beating heart. A sensation of profound, invasive cold bloomed where it pointed, as if an ice-cold needle were being slowly inserted into my sternum. "The scraping man prepares his table," it whispered, and the psychic voice was filled with a grotesque sense of anticipation. Then, it faded, and I was left alone, gasping, the phantom cold still lodged deep in my bone marrow. The scraping man. The name alone sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. It sounded like a children's monster, a folktale to scare kids into behaving. But the way the watcher had said it, with a reverence laced with fear, told me it was anything but. My life became a waking nightmare. I was too scared to sleep, and when I did, the encounters grew more frequent, more intense. The watcher was always closer now, never in its corner. It would stand by the bed or sit on the edge of the mattress, its weight causing the springs to creak, a tangible, physical proof that this was more than a hallucination. The whispers continued, each one a new fragment of a horrifying puzzle. He collects the parts that don't make noise. The silence under the skin is his canvas. He has asked for your eyes. They are too loud. My eyes are too loud. What did that even mean? I was unraveling, I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls from my friends and family. My apartment became a fortress of fear, the curtains permanently drawn, salt lines poured at every threshold after I read online that it could ward off evil spirits. It didn't work. The watcher didn't care about salt. I was losing weight. My reflection in the mirror was a gaunt, hollow-eyed stranger. I started seeing things while I was awake. Flickers of movement in my peripheral vision. A tall, thin shadow darting behind a door. The sound of faint, wet scraping from the other side of a wall. I was no longer safe in my own mind, in my own home. The final prelude episode happened a week ago. I was in the Paralysis, but the environment was different. My room seemed to be bleeding away, the walls dissolving into a swirling grey fog. The watcher was there, but it wasn't looking at me. It was kneeling, its head bowed. The static was a low, reverent hum. A new presence entered the fog. I couldn't see it clearly. It was a massive, indistinct shape, hunched and asymmetrical. But I could hear it. A sound, a slow, rhythmic, grating noise. Scrape, drag, scraped and drag. It was the sound of something heavy and rough being pulled across stone. The sound of a butcher sharpening his tools on a whetstone. The sound of bone on bone. The scraping man. A wave of pure, unadulterated horror washed over me. A psychic vomit of despair and agony. This thing, this presence, it was wrong in a way that defied physics and biology. It was an embodiment of violation, of dismantlement. The watcher, my tormentor of a decade, was merely its herald, an acolyte to this god of agony. The scraping sound stopped. A deep, resonant thrum filled the fog, a vibration that felt like it was tearing my cells apart. It was a question, directed not at me, but at the watcher. The watcher lifted its head and turned its smooth, black face towards me. The static rose, and its whisper was the last thing I heard before I was violently ejected back into consciousness. Tomorrow night. I didn't sleep for the next 24 hours. I consumed enough caffeine to give a horse a heart attack. I paced my apartment, my ears straining for any sound, my eyes aching from staring into every dark corner. I knew it was futile. Tomorrow night was a promise. It was an appointment. The night came. I sat on my bed, my back against the wall, a baseball bat in my lap. It was a pathetic defense, but it was all I had. The clock on my bedside table ticked from 11:59 to 12 a.m. Midnight. The air in the room grew thick and heavy. The familiar pressure began to build on my chest. But this time, I was still awake. I was still in control of my body. This wasn't sleep paralysis. This was an invasion. The static started as a whisper, then grew to a roar. The temperature plummeted. My breath plumed in the air in front of me. The shadows in the corner of my room began to coalesce, to pull themselves together, stretching and thinning until the watcher stood there once more. But it didn't stay in the corner. It glided forward, stopping at the foot of my bed. It didn't look at me. It looked past me, at the wall behind me, and it bowed. And then I heard it. The sound I knew I would hear. Scrape, drag, scrape, drag here. It was coming from my closet door. My blood turned to ice. My grip on the baseball bat was useless. My fingers were frozen, paralyzed not by sleep, but by a terror so complete it had commandeered my nervous system. The scraping sound was slow, methodical, unbearably loud in the silent room. It was the sound of something immense, something patient, something that knew it had all the time in the world. The closet door began to open, not with a hand on the knob, but inward, as if an immense pressure from the other side was forcing it. The wood of the door groaned and splintered with a sound like gunshots. Through the widening crack, I saw not the familiar hanging shirts and stacked boxes, but the same swirling grey fog from my vision. The door tore completely off its hinges, crashing to the floor in a cloud of splinters and dust. And it stood in the doorway. The scraping man. My mind broke trying to process it. It was a giant, stooped figure. Its back a grotesque, twisted hump. Its skin was a patchwork of mottled greyish flesh, stitched together with thick black cord that pulsed like veins. It had too many arms, all of them long and jointed in wrong places, some ending in hooks, others in rusted bloody blades, one in a cluster of constantly moving needle-like probes. But its face is what I will carry with me into whatever hell awaits me. It had no eyes, just smooth, sealed skin over its sockets. Its mouth was a wide, horizontal gash, stretched into a permanent, rictus grin, filled with flat, grinding plates like a sea urchin's teeth. And in one of its many hands, it held a long, curved tool, a sort of trowel made of stained bone and pitted metal. The source of the scraping sound. It wasn't sharpening it. It was working. The tool was caked with substances I didn't want to identify. It took a step into my room, and the floorboards shrieked in protest. The thrumming sound I had felt in the vision returned, a physical pressure against my skin. It was scanning the room. Its head, cocked at a terrible angle, turned slowly towards me. I was screaming. I know I was, but no sound came out. The terror had stolen my voice. The scraping man took another heavy, scraping step towards the bed. The watcher remained bowed, a statue of obedient shadow. The giant thing loomed over me, its stench filling my nostrils. The smell of an open grave, of chemical preservatives, of old blood and something sweetly, nauseatingly rotten. It leaned down, its eyeless face inches from mine. I could feel a cold, dead energy radiating from it. One of its arms, ending in a blade, lifted and hovered near my face. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the cut, the pain, the end. But it didn't touch me. The blade moved past my head, towards the wall behind me. And I heard it. A new sound. A soft, wet, squelching sound, followed by the gentle, rhythmic patter of something dripping onto my pillow next to my ear. I forced my eyes open, turning my head just an inch. The scraping man was working on the wall. Its blade was carefully, meticulously, scraping away the plaster and the paint. But it wasn't just removing the wall. It was revealing something underneath. Something that had always been there. A tapestry of flesh and bone, woven into the very structure of my apartment. I saw sinew and muscle, pulsing weakly. I saw fragments of rib cage. I saw a large, still beating heart, connected by throbbing arteries to the latticework of tissue that spread across the exposed studs. My home, my sanctuary, it was alive. It was made of people, of parts. The scraping man made a satisfied, grinding hum. Another of its arms, the one with the needle-like probes, darted forward and began to gently, almost surgically, adjust something within the fleshy wall. It was a craftsman, and this horror, was its masterpiece. It then turned its attention back to me. The blade retracted, and a different appendage, one with long, delicate, bone-white fingers, emerged from the tangle of its limbs. It reached for my forehead. This was it. This was where I became part of the wall, where my parts that don't make noise were harvested. The bone-white fingers touched my skin. It was not cold. It was Nothing. A perfect absence of sensation. A void. And then, the knowledge flooded into me. Not in words, but in images, in feelings, in absolute truths. I saw it. The scraping man is not a monster in the traditional sense. It is a curator, a restorer. It exists outside our understanding of life and death. Its purpose is to maintain the great edifice, a structure that exists in a dimension layered over our own, a living architecture made from the silent components of conscious beings, the parts of us that don't scream, that don't think, that simply are, the quiet biological machinery, the liver, the pancreas, the silent, steady beat of a heart, the complex, wordless lattice of the nervous system. It harvests these quiet parts to patch holes, to reinforce weakening sections, to add to the ever-growing cosmic structure it serves. The Watchers are its scouts. They don't cause sleep paralysis. They are attracted to it. The state of being awake and asleep simultaneously creates a thin spot, a window through which they can identify viable materials. People whose silent parts are particularly robust, particularly harmonious. My eyes were too loud because they are connected to the conscious, noisy brain. They see, they interpret, they scream. They are not useful for the edifice. But the rest of me, my quiet, functioning interior, was prime material. I was a rare find, a masterpiece of silent biology. The scraping man was not going to kill me. It was going to take me apart carefully, exquisitely, and weave my silent parts into the wall, into the floor, into the foundation of this reality, where I would remain, conscious and aware for millennia, feeling the slow, grinding growth of the edifice around me, a single silent note in a symphony of eternal living architecture. The knowledge was the true horror. Death would have been a mercy. This was damnation. The bone-white fingers began to press harder. I felt a separation, a loosening of the connection between my noisy self, my thoughts, my memories, my fears, and my silent, biological machine. I was being unplugged from my own body, and in that final, fleeting moment of coherent thought, as my consciousness was being gently, meticulously peeled away from the silent, useful parts of me, the Watcher finally moved. It glided to the side of the bed, its smooth, black face looking down at what was left of me. The static rose, a final, intimate whisper directly into the dissolving core of my being, the one chilling thing that explained it all, the thing that made the entire, horrific universe make a terrible, awful sense. "Don't worry," it whispered, its voice now almost soothing. "You'll be so much more useful now, and you'll never have to dream again." The last thing I saw was the scraping man's bone tool, moving towards my chest with the tender care of a sculptor. The last thing I felt was not pain, but a profound, final silence. I am writing this from the silence. My body is gone. My noisy self is trapped here, a ghost in the machine, a screen with no mouth. I am part of the wall in what was once my apartment. I can feel the new tenant sleeping in the bed, his heart beating a rhythmic, quiet thump that vibrates through my new form. I can feel the slow, cosmic growth of the edifice all around me, a universe of captured, silent parts. I am aware of the others woven into the plaster and the pipes, their silent screams echoing in a frequency only we can perceive. And sometimes, late at night, I see the Watcher. It stands in the corner of the room, watching the new tenant, and sometimes it turns its smooth black face towards me, and I feel a flicker of the old static. It is checking on its handiwork. I am useful now. I am silent, but I still dream. Oh God, I still dream. I dream of the scraping sound, and I know with a certainty that is my only possession, that one night the new tenant will wake up. He will be pinned to his bed. He will see the watcher in the corner, and he will hear it whisper,